You're 89 years old and you mentioned that it has almost nothing to do with genetics. What is the real secret then?
Introducing Professor Marion Nestle, molecular biologist and nutritionist for over 4 decades. She's the author of over 15 books, including What to Eat.
People who eat a lot of ultra-processed foods have a poor health outcome. Deliberately formulated to be irresistible, if not addictive.
I'm Loveleen, host of Limitless with Loveleen podcast on YouTube and Spotify.
It's the one dietary component that has never been a problem. The best advice about shopping is to...
Hi, Professor Marion. Thanks for joining me today. My first question for you is that you're 89 years old and you mentioned that it has almost nothing to do with genetics. What is the real secret then?
Good nutrition, of course. I don't know how to answer that question. I think it's just good luck. And maybe good nutrition has something to do with it. I eat pretty healthfully. I get a lot of sleep. I don't drink a lot. I don't take drugs. I've never smoked. Those were, sort of lucky things that happened when I was young that seem to have paid off, but I don't really know. I think a lot of it has to do with luck.
And do you think people sometimes overestimate the role of genetics then and how that decides their health?
Oh, I think everybody overrates the role of genetics. Any parent who has had more than one child knows that genetics is very important because the children are born with their own personality right away. And if you're lucky that their personalities will fit with yours. But genetics is obviously very important. But then so is what happens afterwards. And the healthiest people in the United States are people who come from families with money and education. That is as powerful an impact on health as any genetic factor.
I see. And
better to be rich if you can do it.
I see. So for someone who's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, maybe they want to implement one small change that they can start doing. What are some of the first habits you actually encourage people to start changing, or you yourself have done as well? Small habits which are easy to implement and not necessarily something which is driven by money.
Well, I would say just eat your vegetables. Mm-hmm. If you can add vegetables to your diet, you'll be doing a lot for your nutrition. You'll be doing a lot for your digestive health. And eat the ones you like, any way you like them.
I see. And I've read that you don't have a set time that you eat. You don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to have my breakfast at 9 a.m. You say you eat when you feel hungry. What does that mean? And what time did you eat today? Why was that?
Well, I haven't eaten today yet because I've had coffee. But I'm just starting to feel hungry now. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Usually I eat around 11:30 for the first time. I just don't get hungry before then. And I don't think it makes any difference what time you eat. What does make a difference is what you eat and how much. How much makes a really big difference.
So you mentioned how much someone eats then. How much should someone be eating? How many meals? Do you believe in intermittent fasting?
Well, I don't think any of that makes any difference at all. It's what the totality is. And if you're not gaining weight inappropriately, if you're not losing weight, you're probably eating enough food. You don't have to worry about it. It's not something I worry about. I weigh the same as I did when I was in high school. It's just never been a problem. And I'm very fortunate in that respect, as I've never had a serious weight problem. For people who do, that's a different matter. But I think, you eat when you feel like it. You eat healthfully. You don't eat too much. You're doing fine. If you eat a wide variety of foods, you're meeting your nutritional needs. I find all of this very simple.
I see. And from the way you're talking about food and what I can tell, I see you have a very healthy relationship with food. And one question which I think is quite interesting is that a lot of people say that, oh, you should eat no junk or have no unhealthy food. What's your view about that? Is there any treat?
Junk food. I like it. I'm an everything in moderation kind of person. I'm one of these people who can have junk foods in the house and not eat them, or eat only a little bit. There are some I have more trouble with than others. These foods that are junk foods are formulated, we now call them ultra processed, but they're formulated so that you can't stop eating them. That's the whole point. There are some I have more trouble with than others, but I can keep candy in the house and not eat it. And I know lots of people who can't. And if you're one of them, don't have it in the house.
I see. So you mentioned ultra processed food. What is the difference between ultra processed food and just processed foods? And what's your view on them?
All foods are processed. So recently in 2009, a public health professor at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil developed a classification of foods based on their degree of processing. And there's unprocessed and minimally processed. You don't have to worry about those. The ones you worry about are the ones that are what he called ultra processed, which means industrially produced, usually with additives that you cannot possibly buy at a grocery store, deliberately formulated to be irresistible, if not addictive. And you can't make them in your home kitchens because you don't have the machinery and you don't have the additives. So the easiest way to explain that is corn on the cob is unprocessed. Cooked corn, frozen corn is processed, and Dorito chips are ultra processed.
I see. And what is your view on ultra processed foods? How much of them should we be consuming?
Oh, well, as little as possible, because there's now so much evidence that people who eat diets that are based largely on ultra-processed foods, and they make up half or more of the calories of most adults in the United States, and even more of the diets of children. People who eat a lot of ultra-processed foods have a poor health outcome. That's correlational. But there are now literally hundreds of studies that show that diets that are high in ultra-processed foods lead people to have more heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, overall mortality. And while those studies are associations and they don't prove causation, we do have controlled clinical trials that show that when people are fed diets that are largely ultra-processed, they take in more calories, a lot more calories than they would if they were eating just processed or minimally processed foods. So it's worth knowing how to identify an ultra-processed foods, mainly by the ingredient list on the package label, and avoiding them if you can avoid them, or not eating too much of them. I would say, never say never. And if you have your favorites, you certainly can eat them. Just don't have a lot of them around in the house because they're formulated so you can't stop eating them.
I see. So let's say we have someone listening who has a diet which is mainly based on ultra-processed foods and they're just realizing it now. How would you advise them to change? What are some of the first small changes that you make? I know in your book, What to Eat Now as well, you talk about how to shop around the supermarket, what to get. So what are some of those small steps someone can take to build up their diet to be healthy?
I would say the first thing you have to do is to learn how to cook. Because if you're going to be eating real unprocessed foods, you have to learn how to cook them. And, cooking is fun once you get the hang of it. I learned how to cook in the 8th grade in middle school. We're not teaching cooking in middle school anymore, which is a big loss, I think. But it's really you don't have to be a gourmet chef to make meals that taste good. You really don't. You just have to know a few things, and it's worth learning those. And there are plenty of people who are happy to teach you that online as well as in person. But that's absolutely critical, because the best advice about shopping is to shop the periphery of the supermarket and buy real foods that need cooking or assembling, or you need to do something with them. You have to know how to do something with them. It's worth learning.
And what would you say to someone if they said to you, I don't have time to learn how to cook?
I would say you live in today's world, and I get it completely. Then you need to learn how to shop adequately for pre-prepared foods. And I would say, try to find salads, try to find vegetable dishes. There are plenty of pre-prepared foods that are quite healthy. I think there isn't a supermarket in the United States that you can't find healthy food in. Much of it pre-prepared if you need to do that. I have a lot of sympathy for people who don't know how to cook and who feel that they can't cook. But really, it's worth learning how to do it because it doesn't take very much time. It really doesn't have to.
No, I definitely agree. Cooking is a really great skill to have. And on that note, I have a question relating to nutrients and things. What is your view about protein? How much do we need, especially in the West? I know we have a very big focus on, are we hitting our protein? Are we getting enough? What is your view on that?
Well, as a nutritionist, I find it hilarious that people are so obsessed about protein. It's the one dietary component that has never been a problem in countries where people have enough food to eat. If you're eating enough calories, you're getting enough protein. Unless you're a really elite athlete, and exercising 10 hours a day and needing thousands of calories, you're going to be getting enough protein. Most people eat twice the protein they need already. That because there's protein in everything. And so the idea that this has become the latest trend, we nutritionists just scratch our heads over it. How did this happen? Because it just doesn't make any nutritional sense at all. I just don't worry about protein. I wouldn't give it a minute's thought.
I see. So what about fiber then? How important
is it? It's a different matter. Fiber comes only in plant foods, and that means grains, beans, fruits, vegetables, I mean, nuts, seeds, the whole works. All of those have fiber. And if you're not eating a lot of plant foods, you're not getting as much fiber as you need. Fiber is very helpful for digestion. And lots of people have digestive issues. The first thing that's usually recommended is to get more fiber. That means eating more vegetables, unless you're going to do it pharmacologically, which doesn't work nearly as well.
Okay, so you mentioned pharmacologically it doesn't work as well. What is your view on supplements then in general as well? For example, people taking magnesium, vitamin D, fiber supplements, any of those. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't take supplements, and I don't think they're necessary if you eat healthfully, and I think I eat healthfully enough. The supplements are interesting because more than half of American adults take nutritional supplements of one kind or another, and the supplements make them feel better. It's very hard to argue against something that is very unlikely to be harmful. The great thing about supplements is most of them are not harmful. So they're not harmful. They don't cost very much. They make you feel better. It's hard to argue about that. What's absolutely ironic is that there is so little science demonstrating that supplements make healthy people healthier. They may make them feel better, but they don't make people healthier necessarily. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, I find that fascinating, but I don't see very much evidence that they make healthy people healthier. Unhealthy people, yes, they could be very helpful. And they have specific things that some of them do. But I don't argue about it. You want to take supplements, go ahead. It's unlikely to be harmful if it makes you feel better. In this world that we currently live in, anything that makes you feel better is probably a good thing.
I see. And I know you mentioned that it's important to basically take everything in moderation. That's almost your mini secret for living healthily. But you mentioned that a majority of our fiber comes from plants. I wanted to ask you.
The majority, all
of our fiber comes from plants. Sorry. So every single fiber source directly from plants.
Mm-hmm.
I see. So in terms of what is your perspective on what is our split between non-vegetarian foods such as meats and chickens in comparison to vegetarian foods like plants? How much should both of them be an aspect of our diet?
Well, I'm an omnivore, so I eat meat. I just don't eat a lot of it. But vegetarian diets are very healthy. Vegetarians live longer. They have less chronic disease. They do fine. It's, there's no single food that's essential in diets. The one thing that strict vegetarians, that's vegans who eat no animal product, vegetarians who eat any animal products, that's a complete non-issue. There's just no problem about it at all. There's nothing to even discuss. They're very healthy diets. Vegan diets are missing one vitamin, and that's vitamin B12, because that vitamin is found only in foods of animal origin. But as long as vegans are getting enough calories, are eating a wide variety of foods, and have a source of B12, they're probably doing just fine.
Okay, I
I
see.
think vegan diets are a lot of work, so I'm not interested in that. It's very hard to avoid animal products completely, but people can do it if that's what they want to do.
Okay, I see. That makes sense. And I want to ask, what is your take on Ozempic? Because I know you have a little bit of a different take on it and what your perspective is on it.
I don't think I have a different take on it at all. I think my take is totally based on the research literature, which shows that for people who've had problems with weight all of their lives, these are miracle drugs. People are losing weight who were never able to lose weight before, and the drugs seem to be associated with improvements of metabolic risk factors for a whole host of diseases. People who are taking these drugs say they feel better, they have more energy, they're stronger, their relationship with food has totally changed. One of the things that the drugs do is they reduce the food, what they call food noise. That was a new term for me. I had never heard it before, but I really like it. And it refers to having food in the house that you just can't resist eating. And thinking, obsessing about food, thinking about where your next meal is coming from, thinking about food all the time. The drugs stopped that for many people. And that changes people's relationship with food. Many people on the drugs are eating more healthfully. They're certainly eating less. And the food industry has already noticed that big time. And they're feeling better. It's hard to argue with that. Not everybody can take the drugs. There are a lot of side effects. Some people handle the side effects differently. And the long-term consequences of taking these drugs over a long period of time, we don't really know what they are yet because they're still relatively new. But I'm not. About a year or so ago, I started asking people if they were taking the drugs, to come and share their personal experience with me. And lots of people did. I was absolutely stunned by how many people in the audiences I was speaking to were on these drugs. I was really amazed. 1 out of 8 Americans, adults, is on these drugs. That's a lot. And the numbers are going up and up and up as the drugs become more available and less expensive, and pills instead of injections. That opens the possibility up for lots of people taking more, and Medicaid has made it easier for people on Medicaid to take them. More and more people are going to be taking them, and we may end up with a healthier population as a result, or we'll find out that for some people the drugs cause problems where they have to go off them. Most of the research says that when people go off the drugs, they gain the weight back, but some people don't. I don't know. There's a lot still to find out.
I see. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to pivot back to your book again, looking at if someone's thinking whether or not they're taking Ozempic, whether or not they want to change their diet, they're in a supermarket right now, what would you advise them to do? they're confused. I know some people, they walk into a supermarket, there's so many aisles, they feel a bit confused. What should I get? What is healthy? What should I do? How would you help that person?
Well, again, I just don't see this as being complicated. If you can cook, and I keep coming back to that because lots of people can't. Lots of people don't have cooking equipment. Amazing numbers of people don't have refrigerators or stoves or pots, pans, or knives. You have to have all those things. Eating healthfully is very difficult without them. And it's certainly expensive. Healthier foods are more expensive than unhealthy foods. Lots of companies are making products specifically for people who are taking GLP-1 drugs. If you like those products and have the money to buy them, fine. These are foods that are usually higher in protein, vitamins, and minerals, fiber, and lower in sugar and other kinds of food additives. But, you just go and buy food and eat real food. It's really simple. And I just don't see these things as major problems. You have to read, if you're going to buy packaged foods, you have to be able to read food labels. And I would say start with the ingredient list. If it's got a great big long list of ingredients, it's an ultra-processed food. Pick something else.
I see. Okay, that is very, very helpful advice, actually, really breaking things down. And I want to touch more onto your personal life and ask, what keeps you so motivated? What was your inspiration for going into this?
Oh, I love to eat. To me, food is one of life's greatest pleasures. It's something you can do for yourself several times a day. I just love it. And I find it fascinating that food links to any problem in society that you could possibly think of. There's a food linkage to it in some way. So I'm fascinated by the study of food. I love it that it's interdisciplinary and involves science and history and sociology and anthropology and culture and money and politics and all of those things. I write books about food politics, and it's I just find it fascinating.
You mentioned that food comes up a lot when we're talking about problems and food politics. What is that?
What is food politics? I haven't been asked that question in a long time, certainly not since Robert F. Kennedy Jr. became Secretary of Health and Human Services. Food is intensely political. For one thing, it generates several $1 trillion a year just in the United States. That means that the corporations that make foods are businesses that make lots and lots and lots of money, and they do everything they can to use the political system to protect sales of their products, no matter how healthy or unhealthy their products might be. We have people in America who don't have enough food to eat. They don't have the money to buy the food. They're hungry. They're on food assistance programs if they can get on them, but the government is trying to get them off the food assistance programs. Obesity and chronic diseases are enormous problems in our society, and yet the government has very, very few policies to protect people or to help people prevent chronic disease. That's politics. And then there's international trade and food safety. And who decides who gets to eat what where? And supermarkets lobbying against food safety regulation. That's politics. You can't avoid it.
And you mentioned chronic diseases, obesity. Do you think that if there was more awareness, more education, more funding into these areas, we could actually improve those conditions?
Well, I'm greatly in favor of education. I'm an educator. I was a professor at a university for a very long time. Yes, education is important, but if you're trying to eat healthfully in today's food environment, you are fighting an entire food system on your own. You need help. You need a lot of help. And that's why government policy around food is so important.
I see. And I know we've been speaking a lot about food and physical health and what you should be eating, but I want to pivot a little bit and ask you about how do you stay mentally active and mentally healthy? Keep your brain
I
Amazing.
write books. I have a food project. I have a book writing project almost all the time. So I'm always learning new things. I'm always finding out new things. I write a daily blog at foodpolitics.com. That blog forces me to keep up with current events in food politics. And it also forces me to write about those events in a coherent way to try to make them clear. So I'm constantly learning new things and studying new things, and I like that.
And if someone else was listening and was thinking, I want to be able to stay mentally active, do loads of things, how would you recommend someone exercises their brain? What should they do?
Read. I read a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Read, think, write if you want to. Do a podcast. I don't know. I don't do podcasts. I mean, I'm on podcasts, but I don't run one.
No, I definitely agree. I learned so much from these conversations. So thank you so much for coming on today as well. And you have a very amazing mindset. So for my final question for you, I'd love to ask you, if there was one piece of advice you could give to your younger self, what would that be?
Don't be afraid. Just do it.
Perfect.
I was it took me a very, very long time to get started on this career. Looking back, I wish I had started on it earlier, but I sure am glad that it's lasted as long as it has.
Thank you so much. You've accomplished so much. Your work is so amazing, and you're such an inspiration to everyone. Thank you so much for joining with me today.
My pleasure.